Welcome, everybody, to Today and Tomorrow Battle Creek Views. My name is Matt Willis, and I'm at Willard Library right now. We're allowing staff back in the building. I am joined by Jim Richmond and Kurt Thornton tonight. This show is going to feature interviews moderated by Jim Richmond with people who have been involved in Battle Creek's history and made significant contributions to civic life, and who bring some insight on not only where we've been as a community, but where we're going, and also just share some fun history. Jim Richmond is the former vice president of the W.K. Kellogg Foundation. He is also the first full-time executive director of the Battle Creek Community Foundation. He's traveled the world. He's been to China a few times. He's written for the Battle Creek Inquirer, a nice column there. And he's compiled a book called Against the Grain, Profiles of People Who Dared to Make a Difference. I'm so glad, Jim, you're with me. Kurt's with me. We've had some issues technically getting this together, but we're all finally here. And so, Jim, I'll let you introduce Kurt. I'm going to pop out and throw up some photographs when you guys need them. So welcome, both of you, and we can begin.
Thanks, Matt. Thanks. And Kurt, welcome to the second edition or second program that from Willard Library that's called Battle Creek Yesterday, Battle Creek Today and Tomorrow. Although we're going to be talking a bit about, especially with this program, about yesterday. Most people in Battle Creek who've been here very long will know of Kurt Thornton. Will sing Kurt Thornton's incredible work about the history of Battle Creek. Kurt grew up in Battle Creek, grew up in Battle Creek, and went to. Is that telephone ringing?
That's mine. We'll just turn that off.
Okay.
Sorry.
That's all right.
With the technical difficulties we're having, that's just something extra.
I guess we throw that in the pot. Kurt's mother, Frances Thornton, was also a historian of Battle Creek in her own right. Collected postcards of a variety of settings in Battle Creek, and did much more. She was a best friend of the woman who wrote Tales of Battle Creek,
Bernice Lowe. Yep.
Bernice Lowe. Mm-hmm. And so Kurt has kind of grown up with the history, and Kurt is really a remarkable individual. He has worked professionally with the hospital here, local hospital. I think when it was Lila Hospital, for some 30 years. He's worked 20 years with the clerks, the county clerk operation downtown. But people know Kurt because of his passion and his creativity and his artwork as it relates to Battle Creek. And Kurt has written 5 different books on various aspects. Is that 5? Is that the right number?
Just 4, Jim, even though you're making me sound better, but just 4.
Oh, well, I'll say 5.
There we go. Yeah, no one's going to check. So,
yeah, and they're remarkable books, and they're not just the text of the books, but the photos in the books are incredible, and also are the drawings in the book. And I wonder if we could get Matt to hold up one of Kurt's drawings. Or do you have that drawing?
I can hold up. But there's a drawing. That's the drawing I did for my first calendar.
I was going to do a joke there. Start out with a joke with that one. And that's that's Kurt's first work of art when he. What grade were you in? 5th?
That would have been in 3rd grade. That was This is the Apple warehouse in downtown Battle Creek. It used to be the oldest building in downtown. And
Yeah.
in third grade, they had us go there as part of our history lessons. And so I drew that picture. But later on, I drew this one that I think is a little bit better, but it doesn't have quite the detail of all the stones I drew in the other picture. But I like to think I've improved a little bit. So.
Kurt, I know you've got one of your calendars. You've been doing annual calendars, these incredible line drawing calendars for 37 years that depict various scenes in Battle Creek and also capture the birthdays of a lot of people in Battle Creek.
Only really important people, Jim.
Oh, I don't know about that. I'm in there, so I.
There you go. Yep.
But I think you've got a copy of that, of one of those, right?
Yeah. That's the latest.
The latest.
That was this year's.
Okay, the one you had earlier showed your line drawings a little bit.
That one.
Yeah. And there are many other line drawings that are much better than that in my view. that Kurt has done of all of the various historical buildings and scenes in Battle Creek, and there's a lot of that material is also in the books that he's written about Battle Creek that go from one period to the next period, and both in narrative and in a visual context trace the development and history and growth and changes in our community. And if you haven't seen any of Kurt's books, you need to get a hold of them.
Willard Library has copies of them.
Okay.
See that.
Well, just that. See, and the one that Kurt's holding up is my favorite book, and of his. And on Battle Creek. So go to Willard Library if you're interested in Battle Creek history. And if you're not, you will be after you've looked at what Kurt has done. Kurt, how did you, I mean, it's obvious your family was interested in history, but how has that history that you so love in Battle Creek, and there have been a lot of people who are considered historians in Battle Creek, and in our relative age group, give or take a few years, Jeff Stoltz and Mary Mardich and Michael Mardich, and the list, Mary Butler, the list goes on and on. But you have your own niche that goes back really further than most of those people. How did you really get involved in it?
Well, my mother, Frances Thornton, she was a foster child here in Battle Creek, and her foster family, some of them were, this would have been in the 1930s, they would have been in their 80s or 90s, and they would tell her stories about the Civil War, about different developments in Battle Creek. And so Mom pretty much grew up loving the history of Battle Creek, and she passed that on to us, her children, my two sisters and myself. We all were surrounded and inundated in Battle Creek history. And Mom's love for Battle Creek. Mom loved Battle Creek very much. As I was telling Jim earlier, when I was growing up, I thought this was the greatest place to be in.
There's a Mom right there, right?
That's Mom standing in front of Willard Library when she was in high school, which was when she started saving Battle Creek history. She started buying postcards at about that time because she said she could afford them. They were a nickel a piece.
What year do you think that might have been?
That would have probably been in the 1940s, probably 45, mid 40s.
48, yeah.
And she started collecting the Battle Creek history then, and like I said, through postcards and talking to people who had lived through part of this history. So Mom, shared that with us children when we were growing up. It was amazing to see the people that would come through our dining room who would come in and sit to talk to Mom about various aspects of history. And I was telling you earlier, Bernice Lowe would come over and spend so much time with Mom. Oddly enough, there was a gas man that would come, and he would go to people's houses to check their meters and find historic items in their basement and purchase them. And he would bring them over to Mom. But it was, and when I was growing up, I thought our house was a history museum because we had so much of Battle Creek's history located there. Battle Creek has a great history. I know all towns do, but we seem to have an awful lot that happened here that really affected the world and our community. That's really rich and interesting. Of course, I'm a historian, so I like it, but it's like you never know.
Well, give us a few examples of that richness that you're talking about.
Like I said, Mom spoke about the Civil War and about how active people were in our community back in the 1860s. Her relatives went and fought during the Civil War, and they had stories to tell about things that went on then. There's a book here at Willard Library, a manuscript by a gentleman who dictated it in the 1930s, and he talks about his experiences in the Civil War. And he was from Battle Creek. He actually went to Washington and waited in line at the White House to meet Abraham Lincoln. That was back when you could go meet the President of the United States. But I mean, it was a rich history. He was from Battle Creek, and he told great stories about Battle Creek, about living at the Bristol Tavern. It was a road stop for the stagecoaches between Hastings and Battle Creek, and that story was fascinating. I loved reading that. He would tell about going out of his house, and you would hunt for dinner that night. You would go out and shoot something across the field and bring it home and have venison for dinner. I mean, they lived a really interesting life. And the developments in Battle Creek, the Adventists, the Underground Railroad activities here before the Civil War. It just seems like Battle Creek has so much to offer historically, and hopefully, as this program talks about, hopefully more to offer in our future also.
You know, Dorothy Martich, bless her departed, spent an awfully long time tracing the history of African American activity and individuals in Battle Creek, as I recall. She may still be
Dorothy is still alive. Dorothy, I still communicate with her periodically, and yes, she and her husband Michael spent a great portion of their time researching Black history in Battle Creek. Their information is incredible. They recorded so much information, and it's here at Willard Library. It's available, and once again, they deposited it here so people could use it and read it and find it interesting, because it's so interesting.
Yeah. Well, a lot of your work is both photographic what do you think kind of sets us apart from a visual standpoint? And what are those? I mean, everyone sees the Battle Creek Sanitarium, but there are other things that we probably miss every day.
Yeah.
Taking a look at, or suggesting that people take a look at.
Well, interestingly enough, Mom bought lots of scrapbooks at garage sales, so we would have pictures of just plain Battle Creek people at parades, at different events going on in the city, out of Gogwak Lake. She found this scrapbook from a lady who worked at the Post Company, and as far as I can tell, she was just a clerk, but she took 50 or 60 photographs of up at the postal plant. And the ones I like is there's a group of office women, and they've all climbed up on the roof of the office building and are all standing up there waving at the camera. There's just that personal aspect of the history, not just the I don't want to say history's dry, but not just the dates and times. You actually see people living the history, and that brings a better connection to, I think, the history of Battle Creek.
And Kurt, there's a special collection, a history collection at the Helen Warner branch, or I believe there used to be. Is that still the case? For people who want to follow up on what we're talking about?
They have a wonderful collection out there. I think Mac McCullough, I believe, is the curator of that now, and he's done a really nice job. The library has been a repository for Battle Creek history for so long because in the 1930s there was a historical society, but when the Depression came, it folded, and much of that information and documents were brought to Willard Library because they needed someplace to put it that would be permanent. And luckily, once again, Willard served that purpose, and they have saved so much of our history here at the library. We now have the Historical Society of Battle Creek and the Battle Creek Regional History Museum that are both working to save history, but Willard has been the repository for our history for so long and has done such a great job doing that. There was a gentleman named E.W. Roberts who in the 1930s, he had worked for the Gage Printing Company. He also was a scientist. He did botanical photographs that are even now part of the Smithsonian Institute in Washington. But he decided to go around and photograph Battle Creek in the 1930s. And it's called the Roberts Collection. It's, I think, about a 10 or 12 volume collection out at the Helen Warner branch. They have to keep it behind the counter because it's so frail. We're hoping that that can be digitalized because he hand wrote just stories that people told him in the 1930s, and they're invaluable. But once again, Willard Library has done a wonderful job saving that for us.
The library has done so much. You've done so much. Individuals have done so much work on the history of the Adventist church here, the sanitarium, of course, the cereal industry. As a historian, what do you think we might or ought to be doing to kind of not only retain that history, but make that history a more of an integral part of the education and the kind of sense of home about people who are in our community?
Well, I know in the elementary school, like I showed you the picture I drew when I was 8 years old in third grade, we used to go visit historic sites in Battle Creek as part of our local history program in the school system. I believe they moved that now to the second grade, so I think children are very young to try to retain that. But that is a source of teaching children about our basis for our history and our background. I would like to see, as I was telling Jim the other day, there's different stories I have that I don't think of as being as historic, but then I realize I'm getting older, so even my stories are historic. It would be nice if people, we could retain some of them. And I realize there's too many stories to have everyone's story, but just some way to have people share their experiences and memories of Battle Creek to make it so it's part of our past and future. And this is what we build on, is what our past is.
Do you think there are efforts like that going on now, or being planned, or should be planned?
Not that I'm aware of, but it doesn't mean they aren't out there. I know the Historical Society tried to do an oral history where they would go and they would have specific questions, and they would go record somebody with a camera and have them tell their stories and save those. People could also tell stories that weren't involved in the questions if they had something important they wanted to tell. But I'm not sure where that is at right now or how that's being edited and used.
There's been a lot of discussion over the past 6 or 7 years about a history museum in Battle Creek. Do you see that as possibly being part of our future?
I'm hoping so. I'm involved with the Battle Creek Regional History Museum. Both my mother and father had saved history for so long and wished for a local history museum. The Kimball House, which is a beautiful Victorian home, and they've done a wonderful job maintaining that and putting history displays there, but it's a Victorian house. It's hard to do a really good job sharing our local history in a
That's
house.
right next to the Y Center, isn't it? Yeah.
Yes, it is, and it's still going. And once again, they do a beautiful job there. The house is just a beautiful place, but we realized there needed to be some place where you could actually have larger displays of the Underground Railroad, our Native Americans here in Battle Creek and the area, what they did, because Gogwak Lake was one of their meeting spots, apparently, on the North Shore, where they had yearly events going there. It would be nice to have more of that written down. Lots of that was lost when the white men came in and pretty much kicked all the Native Americans out, because back then they didn't seem to be interested in what had been here. But those stories need to be told and saved also, because it's part of our heritage. It's a rich heritage.
So there may be a museum, or the possibility of a museum?
Well, the Battle Creek Regional History Museum is in existence. They're trying right now to get funding to make the building usable as a museum. They have to get a fire suppression system, which the Battle Creek Community Foundation is assisting us with that. They have assisted with so much with our museum. Without the help of that foundation, we would not be able to exist. They have assisted us so much, and I can't thank Brenda and the foundation so much for what they've done to help us. But we're hoping to develop a museum that will be interesting to people. As we talked about earlier, a museum with glass cases with lots of old stuff in it are nice, but that doesn't really grab people. You want it to be interesting and interactive. We want there to be things that people can walk through, see things in video monitors, interact with different video kind of equipment, interact with the exhibits, to make it interesting, make people want to come and see it, because our history is interesting, but you really want to make it happen. They were just putting up a picture of my thoughts of how the Regional History Museum could be developed. But it's still a work in progress, but we are moving forward, and I'm just hoping we can get that going soon. With the economy and the COVID events going on, everything's up in the air, but we are moving forward. And we're also looking at joining together with the Historical Society of Battle Creek, because our efforts are the same. We both want to preserve Battle Creek history. We want to present it to people. We want to make it interesting. So working together, I think, will make this happen in a better way. And
doesn't the Historical Society have just shelves on shelves of historical information?
Yes, they have their archives located up at the Fieldstone building, the former sanitarium building, what's left of it. They have a large archives up there that they have done a wonderful job with. Mary Butler has led the efforts to have that categorized and cataloged so people can actually use it. We're hoping that that can be moved down to the Regional History Museum, so we're all in one place together. And the Regional History Museum has boxes and boxes and boxes of things that people are donating that need to be absorbed into the archives and once again cataloged so we can all use them. Because that's the biggest problem. I have lots of stuff, but to categorize it so you can find it and use it is what makes it so much more interesting and helpful.
Well, you have to be able to raise the money and operate a museum.
We are always working on it, Jim. We're always looking for that person to have $1 million or something to give us, but we're happy with whatever we can get.
Yeah. Kurt, I know the people can get copies of your book at the library, but if they wanted a copy of your latest calendar, and I would really recommend it. It's got the most incredible line sketches.
Plus it has your birthday in there.
Plus it has my birthday. And it has, and so does his other 36 editions. They're actually remarkable and humorous at the same time. They used to be available through the Art Center. Are they still? Is that still the case?
They were this year. Of course, we're 6 months into it right now, so I don't think they have them there anymore. But hopefully, when I get around to doing my 2021 calendar, those will be available at the Art Center. Yes.
Well, Kurt, you've made a tremendous contribution to the history of this community and keeping it alive and vibrant. Are there any kind of final thoughts you'd like to say or like to add before we close the program about what you've done or about how you feel about the community?
Well, I don't know about what I've done, but I also want to thank you, Jim, for doing this program, and for Willard Library for making it possible. Because once again, they're doing things to bring our community, educate our community, and bring us together. That's one of the things I see in our future that we need to work on so much more, is doing things together. I'd like to see our 5 school systems come together. It would be great to have them all under one roof, and an educational system for our whole city. I once again like to see the museum, the Battle Creek Regional History Museum, take off and be successful. I want it to be interesting and have people want to come see it. My mom's, the things she saved, she didn't save because she wanted to hoard them and keep them all herself. She wanted to share them with people, and I agree with that. I want to share our history with as many people as possible. So once again, working together, I think, is the key to our future being great here in Battle Creek. Because once again, I love Battle Creek. I like to share my love of Battle Creek, and like I said, my 4 books, I would like to emphasize I love these things. Sharing them is a pleasure to put together. And once again, my calendars, I love emphasizing pieces of Battle Creek that people might not look at real closely, but in my drawings they might see something they had missed before. But Battle Creek is a great place. It's sometimes our community doesn't see that. I wish we could find a way to make them realize what a great place we live in.
Okay, I think people, again, there's a tremendous collection at Willard Library's
Yes.
Helen Warner branch. And thanks so much, Kurt, for taking time today. It's been fun visiting with you. I've learned so much from you, too, in the time that we had chatting before the program started. And a special thanks to Willard Library.
Oh yeah,
for putting on this series and having you part of it. And our next program coming up will be Steve Jessup, who is a very well-known, successful entrepreneur and historian in his own right. A very different, interesting person, and he'll be the next guest on the program next week.
Hey, thanks, Jim, and thanks, Kurt. And that's
thank you,
wonderful.
Matt.
You know, and yeah, people can come on down to the Helen Warner branch and check out our print collection there, and then of course online, and you can see a lot of historical photos there from our website, willardlibrary.org. You can get into the Battle Creek Inquirer. It's digitized all the way back into the 1800s, and you can access that, the older issues at least, at home with your library card. You have to be on site to get the whole run.
Good to know.
Yeah, but you know, we'll be open soon, hopefully, and we'll get people back in here and back at the Helen Warner branch and back to sharing the local history here.
Thank you, Matt.
We're lucky to have that library.
Yes, we are. Yes, we are.
This is a great community for history, Kurt. I think you said it, and Jim, and just wonderful program. Nice hearing you guys talk. So
thank you. Thank you.
Okay.
Thanks, Kurt.
Thank you.